You constantly make excuses that you cannot speak English because you lack the environment, you lack a teacher, and you have no native speakers to practice with. The brutal truth is, you are using that lack of resources to hide your fear of judgment. Today, I am handing you a system that turns AI into your 24/7 private mentor, a system that will strip away your very last excuse. You don't have a knowledge problem. You have a pressure problem. Think about it. You spent years, maybe 5, maybe 10, studying English, grammar rules, tenses, endless vocabulary lists. You understand more than you think. But the moment someone looks at you and says, "Speak," your mind goes blank, completely blank. Your heart speeds up. Your chest tightens. Your brain starts searching for words and finds nothing. Not because the words aren't there, but because your brain is under threat, and you feel it every time. At work, when a foreign client asks you a simple question. In a meeting, when everyone is waiting for your response. Or even something small, ordering coffee, asking for directions, saying one simple sentence. You hesitate. You replay the sentence in your head 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, and then you just don't say it. Or worse, you say it quickly, quietly, hoping no one notices a mistake. And when you do make a mistake, you feel it instantly, that tiny reaction, that slight pause, that look from the other person, and your brain locks it in. Don't do that again. So what do? You go back to safety. Back to watching videos, back to reading, back to learning silently, because it feels productive. But deep down you know the truth. You are not practicing English. You are avoiding speaking English. Let me show you something. A small moment. You open your phone just for 1 minute. Just one. You tell yourself, I'll check something quickly. 1 notification becomes 2. 2 becomes 10. A video starts playing. Then another. Then another. And suddenly 40 minutes are gone. No speaking. No practice. Just passive consumption. Now imagine this. Same phone. Same moment. But instead of scrolling, you open one app. You press one button. And you say one sentence. Broken. Messy. Imperfect. But real. That single moment is the difference between someone who stays stuck for years and someone who becomes fluent. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. You're not waiting for the right environment. You're waiting to feel ready. And that feeling, it never comes. So you tell yourself stories. I need a teacher. I need a partner. I need more vocabulary. I need more time. But what you're really saying is, I don't want to feel embarrassed. And that is the trap. Because as long as speaking English is tied to embarrassment, you will avoid it. Not consciously, but automatically. Your brain will guide you away from it. Every time. And this is why you can study for years and still freeze in a 10-second conversation. Not because you are incapable, but because you have trained your brain to associate speaking with danger. Let that sink in. You didn't fail. You were conditioned. And until that changes, nothing else will. So the real question is not, how do I learn more English? The real question is, how do I make speaking feel safe enough to actually do it? Because the moment speaking becomes safe, everything changes. Here's the part no one tells you. Your brain is not designed to help you speak under pressure. It is designed to protect you. And right now, it sees speaking English as a threat, not a skill, not an opportunity. A threat. Think about what happens the moment you try to speak. Your brain runs a calculation in milliseconds. What if I say it wrong? What if they don't understand me? What if I sound stupid? And before you even open your mouth, your system shuts down. That is not a lack of knowledge. That is a defense mechanism. Your brain is choosing safety over growth. And here's where it gets deeper. Every time you avoid speaking, you reinforce that fear. Every time you stay silent, your brain records, good decision. You avoided risk, and it rewards you with relief. That small feeling of relief, that is your trap. Because your brain starts to learn. Silence equals safety, speaking equals danger. So what happens over time? You become smarter but quieter, more knowledgeable but more hesitant. You understand everything but say nothing. And eventually you start believing something that isn't true. I'm just not good at speaking. But that belief, it's not real. It's constructed, built slowly through hundreds of avoided moments. Now let's talk about something most people completely misunderstand. You think you need more input, more vocabulary, more grammar, more listening. But the real problem is your brain is overloaded. Too many rules, too many options, too many ways to say the same thing. So when it's time to speak, your brain freezes because it's trying to be perfect. Let me show you what's actually happening. You want to say something simple. I went to the store yesterday. But instead of saying it, your brain starts searching. Is it went or go? Should I use present perfect? What if I say it wrong? And in that moment, you're not communicating anymore. You're calculating. And communication dies in calculation. Fluency is not about perfection. It's about speed. It's about releasing words before your brain has time to judge them. But right now, your system is reversed. You are filtering every sentence before it even exists. And that creates friction, massive friction. And friction kills action. Let's make this real. Another moment. You're alone. No one around. You could practice speaking right now. No pressure. No judgment. But you don't. Why? Because the fear is no longer outside. It's internal. You internalize the audience. Even when no one is there, you still feel watched. That's how deep this goes. And this is a hidden problem. You are not lacking opportunity. You're lacking a system that removes psychological resistance. You keep trying to force yourself to speak in environments that trigger fear, and then you blame yourself for not performing. But the environment is wrong. The system is wrong. And until you change that, nothing changes. So stop asking, how could I be more confident? Confidence is not something you wait for. It's something you build in the absence of threat, which means you need a space where you can speak badly, you can repeat yourself, you can pause, you can fail without consequence. Because only in that space your brain will finally relax. And when it relaxes, something powerful happens. It stops protecting and starts learning. Fast, relentlessly, almost automatically. So the question becomes, where do you find a space like that? A place with zero judgment, zero pressure, and unlimited repetition? Because once you find it, everything accelerates. And that's exactly what we're about to step into next. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Not theory, not motivation. Reality. There was someone exactly like you. Quiet, capable but invisible. They had studied English for years. They understood conversations. They could read. They could write. But when it came to speaking, silence. Not because they didn't know what to say, but because they didn't trust themselves enough to say it. Every opportunity became pressure, every conversation a test. So they avoided it. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and nothing changed until one small decision shifted everything. Not a big plan, not a course, not a teacher, just one simple action. They opened an app and started talking. At first it was uncomfortable. Painfully uncomfortable. The first sentence? Broken, slow, awkward, full of hesitation. They stopped halfway, restarted, changed words mid-sentence, and then they almost quit because that voice showed up. You sound stupid. This is pointless. You're not improving. But this time something was different. There was no one listening, no reactions, no judgment, no subtle facial expressions, just silence and a response. Calm, clear, corrective. So they tried again. One more sentence. Still messy, still wrong, but slightly faster. The next day they came back. Not for an hour, just 10 minutes. That was the rule. 10 minutes. No perfection. Just output. Day 3, something interesting happened. They stopped translating everything. Not completely, but less. Day 5, they noticed they were responding quicker. Not perfect, but quicker. And speed changes everything, because speed bypasses fear. Week 2, they started experimenting. They asked the AI, correct my sentence and explain it simply. And suddenly mistakes became feedback, not failure. Feedback. They weren't guessing anymore. They were adjusting, refining, sharpening. Week 3, they did something most learners avoid. They simulated real situations, job interviews, ordering food, casual conversations. At first it felt fake, forced, but repetition made it familiar, and familiarity kills fear. Let me give you a moment. They were practicing a job interview. Simple question. Tell me about yourself. The first attempt? 30 seconds of struggle, pauses, restarts, fragments. They couldn't finish the answer, but instead of stopping, they tried again. Same question. Second attempt still rough, but more structured. Third attempt something clicked. Not perfect, but flowing. And that moment, that small shift changed their identity. Because for the first time, they didn't feel like someone who couldn't speak. They felt like someone improving. And that feeling, that's addictive. Not the result, the progress. By week, for they were no longer afraid of speaking. Not because they became fluent overnight, but because they removed the fear of being wrong. And once that fear disappears, your brain unlocks. You stop hesitating. You stop overthinking. You start expressing. And here's the part most people don't understand. Nothing external changed. No new environment. No teacher. No native speaker. Just a system. A private space where they could fail freely. And in that space, they made hundreds of mistakes. Then thousands. And every mistake moved them forward. Because they weren't avoiding anymore. They were engaging. Consistently. Daily. Even when it felt boring. Even when it felt slow. Because they understood something most people ignore. Fluency is not built in comfort. It is built in repetition without fear. So let me ask you something. Right now, if you had a space where you could speak freely, make unlimited mistakes, and never be judged, how different would your progress look? Think about that. Because what you're about to see next is not motivation. It's the system behind that transformation. Now you understand the story. But the story is not the power. The system is. Because what changed that person's life was not motivation. It was environment. A very specific kind of environment. Invisible but incredibly powerful. Let's break it down. Right now, every time you try to speak English in front of another person, your brain activates something called a threat response. Not physical danger. Social danger. Rejection. Embarrassment. Loss of status. And your brain treats that seriously. Because from a biological standpoint, being judged used to mean being excluded. And being excluded meant not surviving. So your brain hasn't caught up. It still thinks. Better to stay silent than risk humiliation. And the moment that signal activates a small structure deep inside your brain takes control. The amygdala, your fear center. And when the amygdala is active, your thinking brain goes offline. Your memory becomes harder to access. Your words disappear. Your reactions slow down. That's why you know the sentence, but you can't say it, because your brain is not in learning mode. It's in survival mode. Now here's the shift. When you remove the threat, the entire system changes. And this is what most people never experience. A true safe zone, not comfort, not laziness. A controlled environment where failure has zero consequence. When you speak to AI, something subtle happens. No one is watching. No one is reacting. No one is judging your accent, your grammar, your pauses. There is no social risk. And because of that, your amygdala relaxes. It stops firing warning signals. And when that happens, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for thinking, language, and decision-making, comes back online, fully. And now you can access what you already know. More importantly, you can experiment. You can try sentences without fear. You can repeat them without pressure. You can pause without embarrassment. And this creates something incredibly rare. High repetition with low resistance. Think about that. Most people have one of two problems. They either practice rarely but under pressure, or avoid pressure but never practice. You now have a third option. Practice constantly without pressure. And that combination, that's where rapid progress lives. Let me give you a micro scene. It's late. Maybe 11:47 p.m. You're tired. You're in your room. Normally, this is where you scroll. One video, then another, then another. Your brain shuts down. But tonight, something changes. You open the app. You don't think too much. You just say, "Today I feel tired because I worked a lot." Simple, not perfect, but real. The AI responds, corrects you, encourages you, and suddenly you say another sentence, and another. 10 minutes later, you've spoken more English than you have all day. No stress, no overthinking, no fear, just repetition. This is the invisible system. Not flashy, not exciting, but effective because it aligns with how your brain actually works. It removes friction, and when friction disappears, action becomes automatic. But here's the deeper layer. This isn't just about English. This is about identity. Every time you speak, even badly, you send a signal to your brain. I am someone who speaks. And identity is built through evidence, not intention, not desire, evidence. So the question is no longer, can you speak English? The real question is, how many times per day do you prove to yourself that you do? Because the brain doesn't care about your goals. It tracks your actions. And whatever you repeat becomes who you are. Now pause for a second. Be honest. Right now, are you just listening? Or are you already thinking about how you're going to use this? Because understanding the system changes nothing. Using it changes everything. And that's exactly where we're going next. Pause. Right here. Don't let this become another video you understand and then forget. Because that's your pattern, isn't it? You watch. You agree. You feel motivated for a moment. And then you go back to doing nothing. So let me ask you directly. Right now, are you just listening? Or are you actually preparing to change something? Be honest. Because everything you've heard so far you already knew at some level. You knew you needed to practice more. You knew fear was holding you back. You knew you were avoiding speaking. But knowing didn't change you. Action does. So here's the decision point. Not later. Now. After this video ends, what are you going to do? Open the app and speak for 10 minutes? Or scroll? Delay? Wait for a better time? Because there is no better time. There is only the moment you decide that enough is enough. And if you're still here, still watching, then something in you already knows. You can't keep repeating the same cycle. So don't just sit there. Decide. Right now, are you going to stay the same, or are you finally going to engage? Because what comes next is the exact system. Simple, clear, no excuses. But it only works if you do. Now we get to the part that actually changes you. Not ideas, not theory, execution. Because if what you've heard so far is true, then you don't need more information. You need a system that removes friction so completely that action becomes easier than avoidance. So here it is. Simple, 4 parts. But don't rush this. This only works if you actually do it. Start with this. Not 1 hour. Not some perfect routine. 10 minutes. That's it. Every day. You open the app, you turn on voice, and you speak. That's the rule. No typing. No translating in your head for 5 minutes. You speak. Even if it's slow. Even if it's broken. Especially if it's broken. Because right now your biggest weakness is not vocabulary. It's muscle activation. Your mouth is not used to forming English sounds in real time. So when you hesitate, it's not just mental. It's physical. You're trying to run without ever walking. So for 10 minutes you train the simplest thing. Movement. Say anything. What did I do today? I feel tired because I don't know what to say. It doesn't matter. What matters is you don't stop. And here's the resistance you'll feel. This is too simple. This is not effective. I need something more advanced. No, that voice is your old pattern trying to pull you back into overthinking. Ignore it, because consistency beats complexity. Every time. Now, something powerful happens after you speak. You don't just move on. You close the loop. You take one sentence, you said just one, and you ask, correct my sentence and explain it in the simplest way. And then you read it, slowly, not like a student, like someone decoding a mistake they just made. Because now the correction is not abstract. It's personal. It came from you. And your brain pays attention to what feels relevant. This is where most people fail. They consume corrections but never connect them to their own mistakes. So nothing sticks. But when you link correction to your own sentence, you create memory. Strong memory. Now here's the key. You don't try to memorize everything. You take that corrected sentence and you say it again, out loud, once, twice, maybe 3 times. That's it. You're not building perfection. You're building familiarity. Now we go deeper. Because real life is not random sentences. Real life is situations, pressure, unpredictable moments. So you simulate it. You tell the AI, act as a hiring manager, act as a customer, act as a friend I haven't seen in years. And suddenly you're not practicing English anymore. You're experiencing it. At first it will feel awkward, fake, like you're pretending. Good. That means you're doing it right. Because your brain doesn't need reality. It needs repetition under context. And context creates emotion. And emotion locks a memory. Let me show you something. You practice ordering coffee 10 times. Same situation. Same structure. By the 5th time, you're faster. By the 10th, you don't think. You respond. That's fluency, not perfect grammar. Fast, usable response. And here's the resistance. This is not real conversation. Of course it's not. That's why it works. Because it removes fear while building reflex. And later when real conversation happens, you've already been there. Mentally. Now the final piece. This is where most people completely waste their time. Vocabulary. You've done this before. Long lists. Endless memorization. And then nothing. You forget everything. Because your brain doesn't store words. It stores experiences. So instead of memorizing, you embed. You tell the AI, create a short story using these words, not a long story. Short, simple, human. And when you read it, something different happens. The word is no longer isolated. It lives inside a situation, a feeling, a moment. Now your brain has something to attach to, and that changes everything. Let me give you a quick scene. You learn the word exhausted. Before, just a word. After the story, I was so exhausted after work, I couldn't even cook dinner. Now you feel it. And when you feel it, you remember it. So later when you're tired, that word comes back. Naturally, without force. That's how language actually works. So step back for a second. Look at what you're doing now. You speak daily. You correct immediately. You simulate real situations. You learn vocabulary through context. No pressure. No waiting. No dependency. Just a system that runs every day. And here's the truth most people won't accept. This is not hard. It's just uncomfortable for the first few days. And that discomfort, that's the barrier, not the method. So the question is simple. Not, does this work? But, will you actually do it when no one is forcing you? Because the system removes every excuse. No time? 10 minutes. No partner? AI. No confidence? Start messy. So, if you still don't act after this, then the problem was never English. Think about that. Now slow down. This is the part most people skip. Not because it's hard, but because it's uncomfortable. Because now we're not talking about English anymore. We're talking about you, your patterns, your choices, your excuses. So answer this honestly, not out loud, to yourself. If you had the most patient teacher in the world, someone available 24 hours a day, someone who never judges, you never gets tired of correcting you, and that teacher has been sitting in your pocket this entire time, why haven't you improved? What are you really waiting for? Another course? Another video? Another year? Or are you waiting to feel ready? Let me ask you something deeper. How many times have you told yourself, I'll start tomorrow? And how many tomorrows have already passed? Think about that, because this is not about time. It's about avoidance. And avoidance feels safe in the moment, but over time it becomes regret. Now imagine this. 6 months from now, nothing changes. You're still watching videos, still understanding, still not speaking, same hesitation, same fear, same excuses. How does that feel? Be honest, because that future is not hypothetical. It's predictable. Now flip it. Same 6 months. But you did one thing differently. 10 minutes a day. That's it. Messy speaking. Small corrections. Simple simulations. Day after day. No perfection. Just repetition. Where would you be? Not fluent, but different. More confident. More responsive. Less afraid. And most importantly, you would trust yourself more. Because you kept a promise. That's what this really is. Not language learning. Self-trust. Every day you don't act, you weaken that trust. Every day you show up, you rebuild it. So the real question is not, can you speak English fluently? The real question is, Can you trust yourself to do something small every day? Because if the answer is no, then no method will save you. But if the answer becomes yes, then nothing can stop you. And here's where it gets serious. Because right now you're standing at a very quiet decision point. No pressure, no one watching, just you and a choice. You can close this video and go back to your normal routine. Nothing breaks. Nothing explodes. Life continues. But slowly you drift, or you do something different. You open the app, not tomorrow, not later tonight, now, and you speak. One sentence. That's all it takes. One sentence to break the pattern. Because action creates momentum, and momentum changes identity. You don't need motivation. You need a starting point. And this is it, right here. So let me leave you with this. No more waiting. No more planning. No more pretending you'll start when the time is right. The time is already here. The system is already in your hands. The only missing piece is your decision to stop being passive, to stop hiding behind preparation, to stop negotiating with your own potential, and to finally execute, not perfectly, but consistently. Because discipline is not punishment. It's ownership. Ownership of your time, your growth, your future. And once you take that back, everything changes. If you're done with excuses and ready to build real discipline, subscribe. Not for more content, but as a commitment to a higher standard.